Chigger. Hey guys and gals, Kevin, your budget travel guy here, and today we're going to talk about chiggers. Because if you're coming to the southeast, coming through the southeast, you need to know what these are, where they are, how to identify them, and what to do if unfortunately you don't listen to me and don't identify them. So, what is a chigger? Well, a chigger is a little red mite, and you can get into places with a lot of them that will cause you a lot of pain and suffering if you don't know what these are and how to deal with them. And what got me thinking about this was about 10 years ago, I had a business meeting, and I was meeting over in Tennessee with a guy from North Carolina. And he came up and we had a quick dinner at this place, and we had walked outside afterwards. This is the convention center with a nice rock wall on a golf course, and the guy starts to sit down on this wall, and I reach out and I grab him and I turn him around and, don't sit there. Now you have to understand, I don't know this guy that well, so he kind of has this shocked expression. We're in suits and ties, and he's probably wondering why this guy he barely knows is putting his hands all over him and turning him around. And I said, you can't sit there, it's covered in chiggers. And he has this puzzled look for a few seconds, and finally he says, what the hell is a chigger? And I said, you don't have them where you live in North Carolina? And he said, I've never heard of a chigger. Oh. So I turn around and I point them out, and he still can't really see them because they are really tiny, kind of like, trying to see the head of a needle. And he gets down further and looks a little closer. Finally, he can see what they are, and at that point he's happy and thanking me, but I was just shocked that he didn't know what these were, and the guy was in his 40s. I guess it's that way if you're from the north, if you're from the west, if you're from south of this Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia kind of area, that you may not have ever encountered these before, or at least they're under another name. So I'm going to tell you how to spot them and where they are and all of this good stuff and how to deal with them. Now, sometimes you'll see them on wood, but a lot of times you'll see them on stone and concrete, and even with the sun, 100-degree sun beating down. You'll see them on plastic surfaces sometimes, on where there's plastic fencing that people buy from like Lowe's or what have you and put up in their yard. Plastic fencing, plastic decking. They seem to like those surfaces for some reason. What you do need to know is when you come down to this section of the country, or up to this section of the country, or over to our section of the country, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, in spring, summer, and fall, you're going to have a good chance of encountering these things wherever you go. So if you're coming down to do the Blue Ridge Parkway and you're stopping at nice places, or you're down in Gatlinburg, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, doing the Dollywood theme park, or you're over doing the Great Smoky Mountains, you're going to run into these, and you're going to run into them outside nice hotels and around swimming pools at hotels. You're going to run into them outside restaurants, on, like I said, just walls, benches, different surfaces. And what usually happens is people just go and they sit down somewhere and they get these things on them, and then later on in the day, they start to itch really badly, and by late that night, they're itching really, really, really badly and having a really miserable night. And another thing I thought about earlier is there's so much talk about bed bugs now in hotels, especially when people are traveling, and I'm betting that a lot of times that people wake up and they're itching, and they're accusing the hotel of being nasty and think that they have somehow gotten infected with bed bugs. Bed bugs isn't their problem. What they've done is they've been careless earlier in the day, not knowing this, and they have sat down somewhere and got covered in these things. These aren't bed bugs. It is an entirely different thing. These things are tiny, 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 tiny. Like I said, you could pretty much set one on the head of a needle. As far as what you can do, it's basically shower get them off of you, throw some alcohol on. Not that, rubbing alcohol seems to help. Things like calamine lotion seem to help. But the point is, you're going to be miserable, and you're going to be miserable for a couple of days if you come in contact with a bunch of these things. Did I mention you would be miserable? So the question is, what can you do to not encounter these things? And the answer is, there's nothing you can do to not encounter these things. If you're spending a week down here, I guarantee you're going to run into these somewhere you are. Even if you're staying in nice hotels and eating in nice restaurants and going to nice state and national parks, you are going to encounter these somewhere. So what we want to do is make sure that you can recognize them and get you into the right habit to not be eaten up with these things. So here is your simple solution, and the main thing that you need to know when coming down to the southeast that you're probably calling it. You need to get in the habit of looking before you sit down. It's really that simple. Before you sit down, or when you go to some lookout point and you're all excited and you run over to the wall that's separating you from the edge of the cliff, look at the top of that wall and make sure you don't see little red dots moving around. Before you sit down somewhere outside, be it on wood, be it on, especially on plastic, and especially on stone and concrete, make sure that you don't have these little red dots moving around. And if you do that, you'll have an enjoyable trip. It's just one of the things we have to put up in this part of the country. Just like in Florida, they have to put up with love bugs. In the West, there are certain things they have to put up with. You have to put up with mosquitoes in different parts of the world at different times. This is just another one of those things of being out and about in this great country of ours. You know, it's kind of funny. I did a video about a week ago, and I'll put a link down in the description, but about the media in the South talking about what a bad year this was going to be for potentially for fleas and ticks and snakes. Just one of those headline grabbing things that all the newspapers and TV crews have seen gotten a hold of. And not a single one of these mentioned chiggers, because you are much more likely to encounter chiggers than you are a copperhead. Chiggers are what you really need to know about. And hopefully after this, we'll be able to get back to some much, much happier topics about van life and traveling and seeing great places and saving money. But while you're out doing that on your adventures, we don't want you to get eat up with things that are going to make you miserable. So hopefully this helped you out. You learned a little bit from it if you're not from our part of the world. If you're not a subscriber, of course, we'd like you to hit the subscribe button. If you found this useful, hit the like button, and we'll see you next time.